Good morning, and welcome to the Isn't It Time Facebook Live show this Saturday morning here on the Gold Coast, where we are in summer. I hope you're well, wherever you are today. And this morning we're going to be talking, and I hope I can keep on talking. I'm not been well this week, so I've got everything ready. I've got my oils, I've got my tea, I've got my strepsils. We're all ready to go. This morning we're talking probably, I believe, one of the most important Facebook Lives I've ever done. And I don't say that lightly. This particular topic, unconscious bias, forms the cornerstone for the Courageous Feminine Leadership Program, which I now am running, and to work with workplaces, corporate workplaces, and also individuals to understand the power of courageous feminine leadership and why we need to change the conversation. But this particular topic today, unconscious bias, is the one that I think is the most powerful one of all of them. It's the one we need to really spend a lot of time understanding, a lot of time coming to terms with. And I'm hoping that this show today will help you get to the point of understanding just, what are our unconscious biases? How are they impacting on us, and why we can't move forward as a society until we begin to understand how this is playing out daily, particularly because of social media and the 24-hour media cycle. How we now all have a voice about what we do and don't like. And so this today, I believe, is one of the ones where I hope that I will leave you with some questions. And the more questions that we have, the more that we can create this change. So as you come on today, just pop in and say hi. We've got some technical issues going on with Be Live today. So I'm hoping that this is coming out into your feed, and if not, you're watching this later. But we're certainly being challenged today. So we'll see how we go. So good morning to you, wherever you are in the world. Pop in, let me know where you're from, what it's like where you are, how you are this morning, and let's get stuck into unconscious bias. Morning. I'm breaking up. Yeah, look, Deb, I know, and it's not flowing nicely today. I had to go into the back end to get on. I couldn't get in the usual way I get in, and I know in the Be Life forums they've been talking today. There's been some this week. There's been some issues. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed we can keep on going and see how we go. We'll see what happens. All right, let's talk about unconscious bias. What it is and how it starts. Unconscious bias simply are the beliefs that sit below the beliefs. These are the biases we have when we don't know we're having them. And a little bit of groundwork, research stuff behind it. Our brains at any given point in time, at any moment, are trying to are impacted by about 11 million bits of information. I don't know where they get the numbers from. I don't know, they count them all. Anyway, 11 million bits of information. But we only at any point in time have the opportunity or able to process 40 bits of information, which make sense to me when I'm looking for my keys. Maybe it's number 42. All right, Deb, cool. We'll catch you later. They're 42, so and we're only able to access 40 bits of data. So what happens is the brain goes to finding ways to reduce the overwhelm. So, okay, I don't have to think about that. I know that already. I don't have to think about it. I know that already. I need to focus on this right now. I need to focus on that right now. And so that's what the brain's doing all the time. Now, how does this impact on unconscious bias? Well, we all have biases that are implemented to us from when we're kids growing up, mostly our biases come from our parents. And it's about, how we see ourselves in the world. So we make decisions about, particular ethnic groups. We make decisions about particular religious groups. We make decisions about men and women. We make decisions about people we see on the street. Interestingly enough, a really big issue around unconscious bias is weight, which I thought was really interesting. And so we're kind of just making these snap decisions. What happens is that we then are making these choices not based on what we believe, our knowledge, but just simply what's easiest for us to make a decision on. So let me explain how this works. I had an unconscious bias moment for me a couple of months ago, one that really stood out for me. And it was watching that show, the SBS show, what's it called? Filthy Rich and Homeless. And it was it's got a fly on the wall type of reality documentary where they followed 5 wealthy, high profile people and had them sleep on the streets, sleeping homelessly. And, it was a shock, obviously, these people. Now, I kind of thought that the show was about, it was a little bit, they just went and slept on the streets and then they came home and had a meal and all that stuff. But it wasn't. It was very much a fly on the wall. The producers, the directors had a very removed, hands-off, that the participants in the show, the 5 participants, actually had to sleep rough. They were sometimes in danger. But there was this one moment where this one woman who is a Sydney socialite, she's well known in Sydney, would attend probably, cocktail parties at the Opera House, that type of lady. And she was actually sleeping on the street, sleeping rough. And there was a moment on the show when she said, "Nobody is looking me in the eye. Nobody. I'm sitting on the street and nobody is looking me in the eye." And I caught myself at that point because I thought, I do that. I will see a homeless person on the street and I will not make eye contact. Oh, they want money and, you can't make eye contact. And I realized that was an unconscious bias because when I watched the show and I heard the stories of the people that they were interviewing who were sleeping rough, some of them were really sad, really, really sad. And I realized how in my day-to-day, I'm making unconscious, and yet I don't see myself as being the type of person who is a judgmental person. I work hard not to be a judgmental person. But I recognized I've done that. I've walked past a homeless person and just avoided their gaze. Oh, not going to get involved in that. And it really showed me how easily we can slip into unconscious bias. It's where we're making these unconscious choices. These are not conscious choices. These are unconscious choices about people. Now, this, as I said before, forms the cornerstone of the Courageous Feminine Leadership Program. And the reason why is that there was a study done, a Harvard online study with over 200,000 individuals, people in business. And of that, an overwhelming majority of people interviewed felt that men were more were kind of built for work. Women were kind of built for caring for children. That was a survey I've done to 200,000 people. This was an unconscious bias. That our unconscious bias was that we believe that men are built to provide, women are built to care. And of course, we know, you're on this show every week, that's not necessarily the case. And yet, subconsciously, interesting enough, I was watching a great TED Talk yesterday from a woman, and she was saying she was in HR. And she said her unconscious bias moment was the day that her 2 people, a man and a woman, both messaged her and wanted to talk to her about a pay rise, and how she unconsciously dealt with both those queries. that she went unconsciously to, oh, man, provider, yes, let's have that conversation. Woman, yes, let's look at the work you're doing. I'm sure you'll be supported in your pay rise. And she said right there was this immediate unconscious bias that the man is the provider. And she said what's worse is that I am the provider in my family and my husband has been the stay-at-home father, stay-at-home dad. So we are constantly doing this. We're making assumptions and decisions each day. Hey, welcome, Sonata. We're making these assumptions each and every day. So today is about challenging you about your unconscious bias. And because it is the thing that's come out of in all the research, it's very, very difficult to change. And we'll get into that further. So how is unconscious bias fueled by the media? If anything's ringing true, just let me know. It's there's two things. One is based on what there are 11 million bits or whatever data we see every moment. We're looking at headlines in the media, and we're looking for the headlines in the media that support our beliefs all the time. I've shared information about that before, called frequency of illusion, confirmation bias, where we are constantly looking for ways in which our brain is looking for ways to justify our beliefs, to cement our beliefs and so, okay, yeah, I believe in it, that's fine, we'll continue on. So it's very difficult to argue politics or religion with everybody. Our unconscious bias is fueled by the media, and it's in the headlines. We'll scan the headlines, go, I believe that. Oh, wait a minute, what's that? Now, it takes conscious effort to actually read something you don't agree with. In politics in particular, every time, for instance, the President of the United States tweets out something, you go, oh, really? If you get in an argument with somebody who believes in his policies or him, there's no winners. You're not going to win ever on that. But how's it play out in social media? There's a thing in social media called scraping software. I don't know if you know about it. Do you know if you ever have Googled something? You might be an airline trip to somewhere. Have you ever noticed that all of a sudden ads for that pop up everywhere? That's what social media does. It's watching what you do. It's watching what you say. It's watching what you watch, and then continually giving you that. Not to challenge your thoughts, but to identify and help you say, yeah, that's right. That's what I believe. I'm going to click on that because I like that. I want to know more about that. But it's not going to send you information that will challenge that belief because you're not going to click on it. So social media and media is fueling our unconscious bias. I know when I do Facebook ads all the time. So I'm looking for people who are people like you, who would be interested in my message. People who aren't interested in who are not like you will not be interested in my message, and so will not watch what I say. So there's no amount of anything that I say and do that will change their minds. Interesting, isn't it? Unconscious bias. So how does it keep us trapped and playing small? It stops us thinking outside the square. It stops us creating relationships with people outside of usually, in many cases, outside of our socioeconomic and our ethnic and religious beliefs circle. It tightens our circle of influence and our circle of concern. It impacts on us in ways that we have a very narrow view, even though we don't want to believe we have a narrow view of life. It narrows our view of life. The worst thing about it is that we pass this on to our kids without us even knowing. It's in the schools we choose for our children. We'll choose schools for our kids that have like-minded people because we create our networks. I know myself, my children went to went to independent private schools because that's where my network of people, I felt more comfortable with that. And so I felt my children would be more comfortable in that. It's really interesting. My kids, first to leave school or universities, travel, and have opened up their minds to all sorts of different people. But it's a conscious thing that you have to do in order to uncover our own unconscious bias. How does this impact on us as women? Big time. It impacts on us as women big time, and this is the reason why, is that this is what's keeping us trapped in the gender gap. This is what is keeping us trapped in women attaining more roles in political parties. This is keeping us trapped in women being unable to step into those leadership roles, because it is the unconscious bias. And as I said, 200,000 people were surveyed on that Harvard online research study, and overwhelmingly, the issue came up was that men are seen more as strong leaders in organizations. It is huge. It is huge. So what I wanted to do today was more than kind of change this for you. Hey, good morning. Good morning, Leonie. I hope everybody, it's very slow here today. This is very slow. I hope it's working okay. My voice is holding out, which is great. I've been out for the count this week, I tell you. Wow, talk about being sideswiped by this, I don't know what it was, kind of virusy thing. It just wasn't a flu, or I just didn't feel it was the flu. It was a virus. It was terrible. Anyway, we're back. So my voice, thank you. Hi, Jen. Morning. Lovely to have you here. So what I want to do is to challenge you today, because the issue about unconscious bias, now, organizations around the world apparently are spending millions of dollars in unconscious bias training at the moment, which is really interesting, because some of the research I was reading this week was saying all it's doing is creating more unconscious bias, and people getting cranky about it. The thing about unconscious bias is it's very difficult for you to change by yourself, because you don't know it. You don't know you have it. That's the problem with it. You don't know you have it. It's not until somebody calls you on it. Now, my husband and I have been focusing on this since I first began the research into this Courageous Feminine Leadership Program and the keynote address I gave in Auckland last week. And because unconscious bias kept coming up all the time. And so it is major level of conversation in our house at the moment. And we are constantly picking each other up all the time. That's my unconscious bias. I know it. My husband had an unconscious bias moment this week. This is just floored him. I'm picking myself up all the time. Is that my unconscious bias? Where am I going with this? And it's something, interestingly enough, that is far better dealt with as a group of individuals rather than on your own. And that's why it's really important they do, Jen. They absolutely do. I want to talk a little bit why it's important about having this, and I want to come back to what Jen just talked about then. So let me finish this one. I want to come back to what Jen talked about, because what she just mentioned, something happened in Parliament this week, which I thought was interesting. This is why this conversation needs to happen around the dinner table in your home. This is why we need to talk to our sons and our daughters about this. Because if we're going to change the gender gap, the conversation has to begin with our sons and our daughters, our husbands, our wives. It has to start as a total generational, across the board, building bridges conversation. We have to challenge ourselves on gender, on unconscious bias. You'll just have a sip of tea. We're hanging in there, but I can feel it. Because until we begin the conversation where we challenge ourselves on our biases, we will not create change. We are not going to create change in gender equity. As I mentioned on last week's show, current data puts us that we will not reach gender equity. We will not reach gender equity for well over 200 years at our current rate. Now, I was floored by that, and that's why I am fueled by this. I am passionate about this now. It is my focus now, to to open up the conversation about the challenges of leadership and where we're heading, because I honestly believed that I was making a difference in the world for my children. And when I read those statistics, I realized they are not going to see change in their lifetime. And that just shocked me. We have to start this conversation. I want to get back to what Jen talked about. Do you know, in Australia at the moment, unless you've been living under a rock, we have terrible things going on in our government, our parties, political party at the moment. Just stupid infighting, bullying, ridiculous conversations about bullying and women in leadership and who should be in leadership, and just it's wearing, it's annoying, and the whole population's over it. While all this was going on, this leadership stuff, and we need strong leadership, and we see men in suits and ties standing there saying we will deliver and we want to listen to the Australian people. In New Zealand this week, Jacinda Ardern has just been quietly working across a bipartisan approach to meeting the Paris Agreement for reducing carbon emissions. Just quietly. No fuss, no muss. Brought together the two parties, brought them together and just said, we're going to do this. Now, we speak the same language. We have as many Aussies going to New Zealand as we have Kiwis coming back. We have the same intelligence. We have this. Why does this happen? And I honestly believe there is something quite magical going on in New Zealand that the world needs to watch. We need to watch how this young woman, she's young, this young woman is leading. Now, they've got a lot of issues in New Zealand. I don't know a lot. When I saw the price of their petrol, I nearly had a heart attack, $2.39 when I was there a litre. They've got a lot of issues, and it's an expensive country to live. I get all that. But when we're looking at the bigger picture and the bigger issues, she's doing something right. So we have to look at what is our conscious bias. So here's what I want to challenge you today on for the rest of the week. Where are we at time? Because I could keep on talking this forever. We're almost at, where are we? I'll make a little bit of time. If you have any comments, let me know. Interesting, Jen. I want to kind of just address that a little. I personally don't believe in quotas. And the reason why, I think women are intelligent. I think what we need to do is we need to start a different conversation. Interestingly enough, the Liberal Party had and I don't want to keep referring back to our politics because it's pain in the ass at the moment, but there was a pre-selection for the previous Prime Minister resigned. Pre-selection for his seat took place during the week, and 3 women candidates stood, and a male, and 3 men, I think, and the male was voted in. Now, I don't want my unconscious bias to go to what the heck, but I do want to look into both sides before I make any comment on why, because I don't understand. I don't understand. But anyway, I just think women are intelligent. We need to be opening up the conversation. We need to be talking about how do we encourage our sons and our daughters to change for us, to help us create this change. How do we give them the strength? How do we give them the language? How do we give them the opportunities? Because until we change this unconscious bias we have, we're not going to. As simple as that. We're not going to. So I guess I want to implore you as the people that are on this call today to start the conversation yourself in your home, in your workplace, about the unconscious bias that fuels our decision-making processes. So when it comes to hiring people in your organization, how is that hiring taking place. When it comes to compassionate leadership in the organization, how are we leading in organizations with compassion, understanding what's going on in our organizations, understanding, for instance, the need for flexibility that people now require. Now, unfortunately, the majority of care giving falls to a woman. Unfortunately, fortunately, rightly, wrongly, that seems to be the case. And for many women in workplaces now, it's not just their children. It's now they have elderly parents. And many women are needing to not only balance caregiving their teenagers and their kids in their early 20s, you know, often going through stuff, but also their elderly parents. So the caregiving is impacting. And so where are we creating compassionate leadership? And I do implore you, if you are listening to Super Soul Sunday, Oprah Winfrey interviewed the CEO of LinkedIn this week, and he talked about compassionate leadership. So if you haven't watched that, please do. And to also just recognize yourself, catch yourself. Where am I? Where is my unconscious bias? What am I? Where do I make decisions quickly based on my beliefs, but not my knowledge? Where did that belief come from? Am I making that decision based on actual facts and data, or am I making that decision based on what I think, believe? So, if we can start this conversation, is this unconscious bias? And bring somebody else into the conversation. So if you have your children, your husband, your partner, ask them, is my decision, is this unconscious bias? Catch others doing it. Actually, is that real? Is that an unconscious bias? You know, we have this thing in our family about parking a car. And my husband bought a new car. And it's a difficult car to park. We can't figure out why, but it's just, it always parks crooked. And my husband was saying, you know, catch how he catches himself saying women can't park a car. You know, unconscious bias. Yes, I can. It's just this car's really hard to park straight. So catch yourself on those cliche things that you say all the time about men and women. And it reminded me this week. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s and 70s here in Australia. And back in those days, I don't know if you remember, we only really had two models of car here. You know, if you're a real Aussie, you actually only drove either a Holden or a Ford. And I remember growing up, we were Holden people. Like we only ever drew, you're a Holden man or a Ford man, and we were Holden people. And I was only thinking about that this week. I was thinking about unconscious bias. I never had a Holden car for as long as I can remember. I just would never buy a Ford. Why? I don't know, because we're Holden people. Isn't that interesting? It's just that unconscious bias that just kind of wraps around it. All right, I am struggling with my voice. I'm starting to lose the plot a little bit here. Thank you for those who have been on today for a really interesting discussion. And I recognise we've got issues with Be-Live today, and with, you know, I'm hoping that I'm able to fix it. I actually have a call with them this week, so we can look at some of this. Thank you for being on. Thank you for commenting as you did, and I hope today that I have opened up some conversation for you. If you would like to know more about the Courageous Feminine Leadership program. It is a program that I have created for organizations to look at how we bridge the gap, how we create the different conversations, how we bring these fabulous men who are there to support us into the conversation. We cannot solve this by ourselves, and we have to stop talking like that. But also, if you know of somebody who is who wants to step up into leadership in their role in organizations, in their own lives, just click on them, have a look, and reach out and have a conversation. I wish you well this week. Thank you for being here, and I hope that this conversation today sparks some conversation in your home. And let's look at how we can make a difference in changing our unconscious biases to make a better world, not only for us, but for our children. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.